Someone said, "This is amazing," and you said, "Oh, it's not that big of a deal." They said, "You're really good at this," and you immediately listed 3 people who are better. They said, "I loved it," and you explained everything that was wrong with it. Everything you would have changed. Everything that almost didn't work. By the time you were done, the compliment had been thoroughly disassembled. And they were nodding, slightly confused about why they'd said anything at all. That's the surface. That's what people see. But underneath it, something else was happening. Something faster than thought. A quiet calculation. Do I deserve this? Is this accurate? If I accept it, if I just say, "Thank you," and mean it, am I claiming something I haven't actually earned? And if I claim it, what happens when the next thing I make doesn't live up to what they now expect? You didn't deflect to be polite. You deflected because accepting felt more dangerous than declining. This is what this video is about. Here's what most people get wrong about this pattern. They call it low self-esteem. They call it imposter syndrome. They hand you a list of affirmations and tell you to practice receiving. That's not what's happening. What's happening is a system. A highly specific, internally consistent system that your mind built. Probably early, probably for good reasons, to manage the risk of being seen inaccurately. Every deflection follows the same logic. Every minimization runs the same calculation. It's not random. It's not irrational. It is, in its own way, completely coherent. There are 8 mechanisms inside this system. 8 distinct psychological processes that combine to make receiving praise feel not just uncomfortable, but genuinely unsafe. Understanding them doesn't make the discomfort disappear. But it changes what the discomfort means. And that changes what you do with it. The first one starts before they've even finished the sentence. Psychologists call this praise filtering, the automatic process of evaluating incoming positive feedback against an internal standard before allowing it to register as valid. Most people hear a compliment and process it as data. You hear a compliment and immediately run it through a credibility check. You're asking, is this person qualified to assess this? Do they know enough to know what they're looking at? Are they being polite rather than honest? The filter activates before you've consciously decided to activate it. It's not a choice. It's an interrupt. And the filter almost always finds a reason to disqualify. They didn't see the early draft. They don't know what you know. They're comparing you to a lower standard than the one you hold yourself to. You send a piece of work to a colleague. They write back, "This is excellent." Your first thought is not gratitude. It's, "They're being nice." Your second thought is, "They probably didn't read it closely." You reply, "Thanks, there's a lot I'd still change." The filter finds the flaw in the praise. The cost. The praise never lands. The second mechanism goes deeper. Psychologists call this ceiling exposure. The fear that accepting a compliment sets a new performance floor that you'll be required to meet or exceed. This one is about time. Not the compliment in the present moment, but what the compliment creates going forward. If you accept that this piece of work was excellent, you have now established that excellent is your baseline. The next thing you make will be measured against it. If the next thing is merely good, or average, or just okay, the drop becomes visible. Accepting the compliment feels like signing a contract you're not sure you can honor. So you preemptively lower the standard. You tell them it wasn't that good so that when the next thing is also not that good, there's no visible decline. No evidence that the first one was a fluke. Someone tells your manager your presentation was impressive. That night you feel anxious, not good. Because now your manager expects that. Your next presentation is already forming in your head as a problem, not an opportunity. The ceiling rises the moment you accept. The cost. You keep it low so you never have to fall from it. The third mechanism is about the gap. Psychologists call this quality delta awareness, the persistent, precise perception of the distance between what was produced and what was possible. You know what the work could have been. You know every shortcut you took, every section you didn't fully develop, every moment where you made the practical decision instead of the right one. You have access to the director's cut, the version that exists in your mind where everything works, and you know that what you made is not that. The person complimenting you doesn't have access to that version. They're praising the released cut. This mechanism is actually a sign of high craft. The ability to perceive the quality gap is exactly what makes someone's work improve over time. But it makes receiving praise feel fraudulent, because the thing they're praising and the thing you were trying to make are two different objects. You finish a project. Someone says it's the best thing you've done. You spend the next hour in your head listing what you would have changed with 2 more weeks. The praise is already archaeology by the time it reaches you. The delta shows you what's missing. The cost makes you unable to see what's there. The fourth mechanism is social. Psychologists call this modesty conditioning, the internalized belief that accepting praise directly is a form of social aggression. Somewhere, probably early, you learn that the correct response to a compliment is deflection. Not because deflection is honest, but because deflection is safe. People who accept compliments cleanly are perceived as arrogant. People who deflect are perceived as grounded, relatable, real. The social reward for self-deprecation is warmth. The social punishment for self-acceptance is distance. You learned this and you adapted, the way any intelligent person adapts to a clear incentive structure. The problem is that the conditioning runs so deep it now feels like honesty. Thank you, it was really nothing, doesn't feel like a lie. It feels like what you actually think. But it isn't what you think. It's what you were trained to say. You win something. An award, a recognition, a public acknowledgement. You immediately begin your acceptance with everything you got wrong, everyone else who deserved it more, all the ways this was a team effort. Everyone nods. You sit down feeling like you handled it well. You handled it the way you were taught. The conditioning makes deflection feel like virtue. The cost makes honesty feel like vanity. The fifth mechanism is the one that runs the deepest. Psychologists call this imposter recursion, the self-reinforcing loop in which each successful outcome increases the perceived risk of eventual exposure rather than decreasing it. Standard imposter syndrome says, you feel like a fraud despite your achievements. Imposter recursion is more specific. Every achievement raises the stakes of being found out. You haven't been caught yet. But the longer the streak, the worse the eventual exposure will be. Accepting a compliment is another step forward in a game that ends in humiliation. The rational move, inside this loop, is to stay small. Minimize. Deflect. Don't let them build a picture of you that you'll eventually be unable to sustain. The recursion is invisible from the outside. From the outside you look humble. From the inside you're running threat assessment on every positive thing that happens to you. You get promoted. For about a day it feels good. Then the calculation begins. There are now more people watching. More expectations. More opportunities to be seen not knowing something. The promotion didn't feel like validation. It felt like escalation. The recursion scales with success. The cost makes every win a warning. Here is what nobody tells you about deflecting compliments. You think you're being humble. You think the discomfort you feel when someone praises you is about accuracy, that you're simply correcting a misperception, keeping the record straight, refusing to claim credit you haven't fully earned. But here's what's actually happening. When you tell someone their perception is wrong, you're not being modest. You're overriding their reality. You're telling them, what you saw, what you felt, what moved you, that was a mistake. And you are here to correct it. That's not humility. That's a very specific kind of control. The compliment was theirs to give. The moment they gave it, it became data about their experience. Your deflection doesn't make you more honest. It makes you the editor of someone else's response to your work. And over time, not dramatically, but quietly, it teaches the people around you that their positive observations about you will be rejected. So they stop offering them. The sixth mechanism explains what you're trying to protect. Psychologists call this merit anchoring, the compulsive need to ground any positive perception of yourself in verifiable, objective evidence before allowing it to stand. You can't just feel good about something. You need proof. Not reassurance. Proof. Specific, measurable evidence that the outcome was genuinely good by a standard that exists outside your own head. Without that anchor, the positive feeling floats. And floating feels dangerous. Compliments are subjective. They're one person's perception. They don't count as evidence. So you discount them, not out of false modesty, but out of a genuine epistemological discomfort with unverifiable data. The irony is that this same mechanism makes you very good at your work. High standards require refusing to take unearned credit. But applied to praise, it makes you reject something that was freely and accurately given. A reader tells you your writing changed how they think about something. Instead of sitting with that, you immediately wonder. But is the writing actually good by craft standards? You can't find the metric that would let you accept what they said. So you don't. The anchor demands evidence. The cost makes lived impact invisible. The seventh mechanism is about identity. Psychologists call this self-concept rigidity, the resistance to updating your internal self-image in response to external feedback, particularly when that feedback is positive. You have a working model of yourself. It was built from evidence, from patterns, from things that happened a long time ago and things that happened last week. That model is not flattering, but it is stable. And stable feels safe. When someone compliments you, they're proposing an update to the model. They're saying, your version of yourself is wrong, or incomplete, or out of date. And your system resists. Not because you want to stay small, but because any change to a stable model, even upward, threatens coherence. This is why compliments can feel genuinely destabilizing. The discomfort is real. Your identity is organized around a self-image that doesn't include this data point, and receiving it would require a structural adjustment you haven't consented to. Someone describes you to a third person as brilliant. You overhear it. The feeling is not pleasure. It's a low-grade wrongness, like hearing your name mispronounced. That's not you. You spend the next 10 minutes quietly correcting the record in your head. The rigidity keeps the model intact. The cost keeps you smaller than the evidence. The eighth mechanism is the quietest one. Psychologists call this relational threat anticipation, the preemptive fear that being seen positively will generate envy, resentment, or shifted expectations in the people around you. Accepting a compliment isn't just a private act. It happens in front of people. And for some minds, the safest version of a relationship is one where you don't take up too much space. Where you don't trigger the social dynamics that come with being perceived as talented or exceptional. Deflecting praise is a social regulation strategy. You're managing the room. You're keeping the temperature even. You're making sure nobody has a reason to feel diminished by your success. The irony is that this mechanism, which is genuinely trying to protect your relationships, quietly damages them. Because the people who want to celebrate you hit a wall every time they try. And after enough walls, they stop. Not out of cruelty. Out of exhaustion. You receive public recognition at work. Before you've even processed it, you're scanning the room. Who looks tense? Who seems quieter than usual? You spend the celebration managing everyone else's feelings about your win. The anticipation reads the room before the room has spoken. The cost silences the people most willing to see you. Now you have all 8. Praise filtering, ceiling exposure, quality delta awareness, modesty conditioning, imposter recursion, merit anchoring, self-concept rigidity, relational threat anticipation. Look at what they have in common. Every single one is a protection mechanism. Not a flaw. Not a pathology. A system that was built to keep you safe, from exposure, from failure, from the social cost of being wrong about yourself out loud. Every deflection is the system doing exactly what it was designed to do. But here is the precise cognitive shift this video is asking you to make. The system was built for a version of the world where praise was dangerous. Where claiming credit had consequences. Where accepting a compliment meant setting a standard you'd eventually fail to meet. That world may have been real once. For many people it was. But it is probably not the world you're in now. A protection system still running for a threat that no longer exists is not keeping you safe. It's keeping you invisible. The question isn't, do I deserve this compliment? The question is, what am I protecting by refusing to receive it? Sit with that. The answer is more specific than you think. Knowing this won't immediately change what happens when someone says, "You're really good at this." The system is fast. Faster than thought. The deflection will still form before you decide to deflect. That's okay. That's not failure. That's what any deeply ingrained pattern does when it runs into new understanding. It keeps running, at least for a while. What changes first is the moment after. The pause. The small gap between the deflection and the next sentence where you can notice what just happened. Where you can register. That was the system. That was praise filtering. That was ceiling exposure. That was the model protecting its own stability. That wasn't me being accurate. That was me protecting myself from something that may not be here anymore. That pause is the beginning of something. It's not dramatic. It won't make a good story. But it's real. And it compounds. If this named something you've been carrying without words, there's more like this here. Not advice. Not affirmations. Just precise language for the specific ways a certain kind of mind works. Subscribe if that's what you're looking for. You don't have to earn the right to be seen clearly. You just have to stop arguing with the people who are trying.